Around this time of year, people start putting together their list of goals and things they want to accomplish in the year. And by the way, any time of year is good to set goals and to look toward the future. But especially around the beginning of the year, people do spend a little extra time writing down what they want to do, what they want to accomplish. And often those lists are daunting for many reasons. First of all, I think people have a hard time because maybe their goals are lofty. But oftentimes I've found is that people have had those same goals on their list for 10 years.
Right. Yep. And we actually every year between Christmas and New Year's, that week, and we're in that week recording this right now, we tend to get together and start talking all throughout the week about what we want our New Year's habits to look like. So this coming year, what habits are we going to pursue? And sometimes that looks like goals, like we want to reach this number, we want to reach this, we want to finish this project, etc. But sometimes it's just repeating the habit from the prior year. Yeah. A lot of our New Year's habits this year were a wink back to this past year where we said, oh, we did that well, let's do that again. Or we didn't do so well with that one, but it's a really good habit to try to pursue. Let's get better at that.
Yeah, we totally had that conversation on a drive of, hey, we did this really well. That wasn't so good. Let's try that again.
Yep.
And it's this continual effort to get better and to develop ourselves in life.
Which, by the way, let me just put a plug in. We didn't plan on doing this,
but
we're doing monthly live date night in January. And we did this workshop last January where we guided couples through setting their New Year's habits. And we have a template for you. It's a PDF that comes with the workshop. And so we're doing that same workshop. We're going to guide you through the same process we go through every year on our own, setting your New Year's habits. So that is coming up January, I don't even have the date memorized. It is January 21st, Friday, January 21st at 5 p.m. Pacific time. And we'll put the link in the show notes so that you can go register for that workshop.
Yeah, monthly live date night is a great way of really getting you guys on the same page, working together toward the same goals.
Yeah.
And just putting some tools in your hands.
Yes. So sorry for that little commercial.
Yeah. But this is such an important time of year.
Yeah.
I actually really enjoy setting goals. And a lot of the people we work with, a lot of it is goal setting and then working toward those goals and helping them achieve a different outcome in their life than they've always gotten. And one of the things that we often come against or, work toward, and then we hit this big old brick wall called fear. And fear is an absolute immobilizer or stopper of progress, or however you want to define it. But and this is fear of real things or even imagined things. Yeah. So anxiety, stress, but also catastrophic thinking, something might happen. But getting a handle on fear and how to progress through it is crucial for a well-lived life.
And maybe dissecting fear a bit can help you start to understand why you're fearing, if it's real or imagined. Sometimes fears are legitimate and it's a safety mechanism to stop you from doing that thing that could cause harm to you in some way, whether that's, in your relationship or, finances or physically, spiritually. So fears serve a purpose sometimes. Oftentimes, though, our fears come when we feel most vulnerable. There's been a lot of studies around vulnerability, and a lot of people, when they were asked about, when have you felt most vulnerable, it was in those crucial moments when something catastrophic either happened or it was about to happen. Like someone passed away and you're going to go make that phone call to talk to that person and share condolences with them, but you don't know what to say. And you avoid making that phone call and you go, oh, I'll call in 5 minutes, or I'll call in an hour. And the hour turns into hours or days or weeks. And then you never make that phone call because you felt very vulnerable. You didn't know what to say. People felt vulnerable when they had a spouse who, had cancer, or they felt vulnerable when their bank account was not matching up with the bills that they needed to pay. And so fear comes when you feel vulnerable. And sometimes the answer to vulnerability is to gain more security, especially if it's like a fear that's legitimately protecting you. And so you gain more security through, wise decisions. But sometimes the answer to vulnerability is risk. Taking a risk and making that phone call to go comfort that person and be present with them, even though you don't know what to say.
Right. And we know that fear tends to warp people's ability to see reality, things as it really is. And what happens a lot of times is we overplay in our own minds just how risky this is. And remember too, we're kind of talking in generalities right now. We'll narrow it down, but we could have fears of so many different things. Clients that have had broken relationships, and now in order to step into a healthy relationship, they have to actually become vulnerable.
Yeah.
And becoming vulnerable is scary. If you've had abuse or trauma in your past, you definitely need to work through that, I think, with a counselor. But that right there causes these defense mechanisms in us. Parts of us want to defend against putting ourselves in a vulnerable position again. But vulnerability is needed. It's a prerequisite of being fully loved and fully known.
Yeah.
So in relationships, this is vulnerable to dream sometimes, because maybe something has, you had this dream, you had this idea, and it never came to pass. So we keep our expectations low, and we stifle our creativity. We stifle our ability to rise above. So often I've seen people with great ideas, or great talents in a certain area. They've always wanted to start a podcast. They've always wanted to write a book. They've always wanted to be an artist. But putting ourselves out there or taking that first step is a big risk.
Yeah.
And that is scary.
Because it's lonely, right? By far and large, taking a risk, a first step, can feel lonely. You have all the what ifs. What if I fail? What if they don't like it? And it's a sacrifice.
Right.
To go take that first step, you often have to invest time, energy, finances, passion, prayer, when you could have been putting that time, energy, passion, finances, prayer into all the other things, but you funnel it into this big step. And so that can be lonely.
Right.
And we all crave connection.
Yep.
So yes, sometimes, that risk, having courage, is going to launch you into a season of loneliness.
Right. And we want familiarity.
Yes.
So there are several ways of kind of tackling this, going from uncertainty and fear and just being stuck to starting the movement, starting the action. But first, so we kind of talked about fear here. I love how Nelson Mandela talked about courage. He says this: courage is not the absence of fear, but the triumph over it. The brave man is not he who does not feel afraid, but he who conquers that fear. So just because you have fear, that shows you that you're at risk, but that's a good thing. You can't exhibit courage without fear being present.
Right.
That it's impossible.
Yeah.
So acknowledging the fear, becoming honest about the fear, and then taking steps to move forward in spite of it is the path to a better life.
Yeah. And a lot of people think that, fear is the opposite of courage. Just like, Nelson Mandela gave a head nod to that when he clarified that courage is not the absence of fear. But really the opposite of courage is discouragement.
Yeah.
Right? So what is discouragement? Well, it's interesting. We're reading in our devotional. We're doing a devotional on the it's called the Hebrew Word Study, Revealing the Heart of God by Chaim Ben Torah. And it's just a fantastic devotional. He has a couple volumes, and we're working through the first volume. But we came across this devotional on the word discouraged, katsar, in the Hebrew. And in Numbers 21:4, it says, "And the soul of the people was much discouraged because of the way." And just to give a little bit of context, God had just given them a great victory, the children of Israel, a great victory in the prior verse. And then the very next verse, the verse we just read, says that they're discouraged, right? The soul of the people was much discouraged. Mm-hmm. So they probably just wanted to throw in the towel and say, I'm out of here. But why were they discouraged right after a victory? And there's a little bit of insight here. Discouragement is often the three root letters in Hebrew. It's kof, sade, resh. So katsar is the root there. The ancient sages have associated those three letters with self-righteousness. Mm-hmm. You wouldn't think that, right? Because we think like, oh, if I'm confident and I know what's going on, like I'm going to be more courageous. Yes, but if your confidence is in God and his plan and his timing and his direction, if you start getting self-righteous, like entitled, I deserve this, and that's really how the children of Israel got. You know, they got so familiar with being...
We're God's kids, so we shouldn't have to suffer.
That's right. Yep. And so I think that's why they were discouraged. It wasn't that they were hopeless necessarily. Mm-hmm. It's that they got self-righteous. They started really putting a lot of entitlement out there.
Right. I've heard it said that people would much rather a God that looks like a doting grandpa that gives us all the great things that we desire and just shower us with gifts rather than a wise parent who wants to build character within us.
Yeah. That's good. So think about that when you're considering your goals or your New Year habits or your focus. And you think, okay, am I leaning on the side of discouragement from looking at how I didn't fulfill last year's goals or, not really being on par with what I had intended to do last year. Mm-hmm. Is there a sense of self-righteousness in there that you need to work on in your spirit, that I'm entitled to these good things, or why am I not having a breakthrough in this area? I deserve this. I should be getting this. That might require a little heart check, a spirit check.
Right. And how much shame are you connecting to this, that whatever you're...
Yeah.
If you've been immobilized by doubt or fear, and then we've had that shame that comes up and pops up all the time, like, well, you should have been farther, you should have done this. Mm-hmm. That shame will definitely hold you back from even looking at this or re-putting your goals back on the calendar to approach it. Mm-hmm. To really, because, I haven't done it forever, how am I, I'm just going to do it again. Yeah. But the thing is you're never the same person. Yeah. Tomorrow, you're going to be a different person than you were today. Not every single thing was the same. There are some new things.
Yeah, that's a good point.
And God's grace is new every day. So, and new every morning. So we have to kind of put that whole discouragement aside and pick up courage. I mean, the Bible says all over, be of good courage.
Yeah.
It's something that we put on. Mm-hmm. It's a decision. So, I can go on this for a while, but just deciding in the morning, what does your game face look like? What does I'm going to go do this look like? And then decide I'm going to walk like that person. I'm going to talk like that person. Yep. I'm going to be a person of whatever your word is, authority or courage, but put it on and walk in it.
Yeah, I'll give a couple of examples just to make it practical. It doesn't have to be this huge thing, right? Mm-hmm. One example, and when we were looking back at our 2021 habits, I wanted to do a parenting devotional, like read a parenting devotional or Bible reading plan. And I never did that in 2021. We read other devotionals and plans and studied different things in scripture, but we just didn't do a parenting one. And I, at first, had a lot of shame about that. I was like, where are your priorities? You should have done this, right? And it takes a lot of courage to say, no. I'm not going to should myself. I'm going to say, this is going to be a priority this year. So how do I put that courage on and make it happen? I'm going to take action today and get on Amazon and find, a devotional that's highly rated for parenting, or a Bible reading plan in my app that's and I'm going to actually start it today. So you take action. Same thing like with my dissertation. I've wanted to finish it the last couple of years and I haven't. And so when I wrote that down this week on my New Year's habits plan for 2022, I do definitely want to finish it in 2022. But instead of shaming myself and shoulding myself, I said, nope, I'm going to take action right now. I'm going to text my good friend Chelsea, who's keeping me accountable. And I'm going to ask her when we can do some dissertation Sundays between services. And I, put that text out there. And that's at this stage for me, taking courage.
Starting accountability,
Yes.
So these are the first steps toward achieving these goals.
Yes. Yep. So I just wanted to give some examples that were practical and be a little bit vulnerable myself about how to take action and take courage and what that looks like to pick courage up.
And really that really speaks to the heart of, okay, so you want courage, start taking courageous action.
Yeah.
And that starts with the simplest of steps. What is the first step? I love how Dale Carnegie said, inaction breeds doubt and fear. Action breeds confidence and courage. If you want to conquer fear, do not sit at home and think about it. Go out and get busy.
Yes.
I like that.
Totally.
And so, so sitting down, writing those goals out is the first step. The next step is, just get some accountability on board.
Yeah.
The next step is, so we have some steps for you. Those are a couple of really powerful steps. Sometimes though, even getting to those steps of putting it as a goal is difficult. Like, should it even be a goal for me?
Yeah.
So we adapted this from Tim Ferriss's TED Talk that's called Fear Setting, which is really, really powerful. If maybe you've always wanted to be a doctor and you're thinking about going back to school, or you wanted to, do something big that's going to take a lot of time and effort, and you don't know if you're capable or good enough or whatever it is. This is a really powerful thing to really help you think through this big action that you need to take. So we adapted this. It's not exactly his format. Go watch that video. It's super good. But just a couple of things that kind of help you get down that path. So the first step would be, what are the fears related to this main fear? So if it's, what's a good fear?
I won't finish school if I start school again.
Right. Yeah. Because maybe when you started school that first time, you weren't as focused as you could have been. So what you would do is you would sit down and write out all the fears. I'm going to waste all this time and effort. I'm going to waste money. I'm going to get into debt. And you just put all those fears down. And then what you would do is you would rate your fears 1 through 10. Like, some fears are not that powerful. Some fears are very, very powerful. But honestly, just seeing your fears all written down on paper generally takes the sting out of fear.
It does.
It becomes more real, because what's the acronym of fear? I've heard it before. It's
I don't remember.
Future events appearing real.
Oh yeah.
Future events appearing real. And because they've never made their fears a reality, they've never paused the fear and really looked at it, it becomes more enormous in your imagination than it really is in reality.
Yeah.
So that's the first step.
Yep. So rate those 1 to 10 and then answer, how can you prevent these fears from becoming a reality? Some of those fears might be legit. I mean, yes, you need to consider the financial impact of going back to school. But are you going to go completely into debt that you can't get out of, et cetera, et cetera? Well, how can you address that fear? Okay, well, I could DoorDash and we could get a passive income stream during the time that I'm going to school, so to pay for school.
You can get grants
And scholarships.
Yep.
Maybe you can substitute teach while your children are in school. I mean, there's so many ways of getting more income or, financial, providing for your family or school financially.
And finding a mentor or counselor or somebody that cares for you that's wise can really help in this process, because sometimes we do have blind spots in our capabilities, and not everybody is built for school.
Yeah.
Some people would just be better at building a company or being the best employee in that company and go up the ranks, like whatever that is,
or getting a practical certificate rather than a full 4-year degree.
Yeah. I mean, there's multiple paths to being successful at life.
Yep.
So becoming real with, this is my path, or this needs to be my path. So having somebody to bounce these ideas or fears off of, I think, is very, very helpful.
And then the last step here, which I think is the most powerful step, okay, is answering the question, what are the consequences of inaction? So if I didn't do anything about this goal, or I didn't take that step, what's the consequence of inaction? We like to think of what life would be like if we fulfilled that goal. Oh man, it would be so amazing, and we would be so fulfilled, and we'd be happy, and we'd be, successful. But what are the consequences of inaction? Because fear is stopping you, sometimes fear can also be a powerful motivator to move through that first fear. Yeah. In other words, are you going to be 7 years old and not have done what God has called you to, or what you're gifted in, or like that's a scary thing to look at. You could spend your life and end up with regret. And the only thing we can't get more of is time. Right. Wasting your time and not being as productive as possible, and the sadness that would come to you, that that I could have done so much more with myself and my talents and my abilities, but I didn't. Right. Because of this fear that wasn't even real. Yeah. So this is just to kind of push you, like this little, and I've done this before. This is not just something that we said, yeah, go ahead and do that. I've done this for multiple things that were holding us back from progressing and, doing the podcast and doing Dear Married Couple. And, some of this is scary for us. Yep. But through action, you start to gain a little bit of confidence of like, okay, this is the right thing. This is fun. This is awesome. And the fear actually starts to lose its power. Amen. So we want to encourage you guys, take action, visualize next steps, conquer the fears by addressing the ones that are legit, and asking yourself, what's the cost of inaction because of these immobilizing fears? Yeah. So just to touch on what you just said there, once you have all these fears written out and then the consequences, oftentimes I've found that people have spent so much time fretting about how people see them or how their pride would take a hit if they don't succeed, that they haven't given much time just to sit there and actually conjure up an image of you successful. Oh, that's good. To bring up an image of what would it look like me accomplishing this thing. I challenge you. Yeah. Once this, don't just go on to the next podcast or the next thing to waste your time or the next entertainment thing. Pause and really sit in it. Like, would it look like for me to become this thing or to create this thing or to see this dream realized? That is a powerful thing too. And then start to create that in little ways. What's the very first step? Start to step your way through it. Long time ago, I got a planner called the Best Self. I think it's Best Self Co. planner. And that was so helpful for me to write out, okay, here are my big dreams. Now, here are my goals to get those big dreams. And here are the breakdown of those goals. And then here are the steps that I need to take to get those goals. And then here are the daily tasks that I need to get those steps. So just by putting the steps out in how do you make these
these dreams to goals, to steps, to habits.
Yeah.
You know, there is nothing that, maybe there are a few things that you can't do. You probably can't build another pyramid like the Egyptians did or something. Like, you can do a lot of stuff.
Absolutely.
Within reality.
And because we're people of God, you think about it in terms of what God has called you to do. And if you're fearful because of maybe feeling like you can't or you're incapable, you need to think back to what God's called you to do. Because if he's called you to do it, he's going to equip you to do it. He might team you up with others who have strengths in certain areas you don't. But when you visualize that dream realized, you need to think about the fruit that it's producing too in people's lives and the impact that it will make, because that's what God has called you to.
Mm-hmm. So take action. Don't wait. Do it today. Motivation is way overrated. Even if you don't feel motivated, sit down and write this stuff out and make out a plan and take action, and then get people to hold you accountable.
All right.
So this is us signing off.
Let's go.
Do it.